A warm welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. This is Friday afternoon already. I'm Paul John Dykes and I'm joined today all the way from Swindon by my good friend Brian Degnan. Brian, how are you, pal?
I'm very well, very well. Glad to be back. Been off for a couple of weeks. Had spent some time with the family for the Easter break, so I'm absolutely exhausted. So it's nice to get back and get talking about football again.
Well, if you've been off for a couple of weeks, there is definitely a lot to talk about, Brian. And you've not had your opportunity yet to talk about the Glasgow derby. Obviously, incident-fueled, incident-filled. And a few times this week, I've had a conversation where I've actually said to fellow Celtic fans, if you remove all the grotty stuff and you put it to one, don't remove it, put it to one side for a moment. You know, the missiles, the singing, all that kind of stuff leading into this game, the fact that there was no Celtic fans there. And it was something of a classic. It had everything, right? It had the thrills and the spills. It had loads of goals. It had the comeback. It had the equaliser. It had what we thought was the winner, then a very, very late equaliser, and lots of controversy around some of the decisions. Isn't that what makes a kind of classic? And I know after the game we've been looking at the performance of the officials and how poor that was. But in terms of the football and all that kind of stuff, 3 each at Ibrox, that's a cracking game, is it not?
Yeah, it was, and actually, it was one of the immediately sort of after the game, when I'd sworn a wee bit and said some expletives I can't repeat and calmed down a wee bit. I actually said, "What a game though! It was a really good game." What I thought was really interesting was the reaction after it from both parties. So and apparently they won 3 each. Which was amazing to me. That really surprised me. It's like when they were top of the league, joint top. It was just amazing. But if that were doing at Parkhead and we'd have drew 3 each, I'd have been apoplectic at the result. It's a result that definitely benefits us. And I saw a lot of negativity from Celtic fans around it, and I felt that was quite strange because I thought, because before the game I would have took a draw, just given the circumstances. Rio just got back. We didn't know what was happening with McGregor. And obviously we've not been in the greatest of form. So I would have certainly taken a draw before the game. I think we were certainly the better side. We obviously had things went against us and during the game. But to see some of the celebrations for across the city, I think that speaks to the mentality and the difference what they're in. And it's, you know, as well as strategy and structure, mentality is the other thing I'm usually grown about. And I think that there was a few Thursdays ago, and it was before the Kilmarnock game, and you and I had said that we felt we would still win the league because Rodgers would, you know, get the best results in the derbies. We felt that, despite the criticism, certainly I've put his way this season, I felt that one thing he certainly does have is the upper hand in the derbies. And remember, we get slaughtered for it. We get absolutely a bunch of trolls, a bunch of incels in the comments. The other side of the city having a go at us, and then some Celtic fans having a go at us for being overly confident. But I felt generally, I never really felt we were going to lose the game. Obviously, it was tense towards the end, but I felt we performed well, and I'm still very confident we'll take them to Parkhead and get a positive result. And I think when you look at CCV coming back, Callum McGregor getting back to full fitness, Hatate getting back, who I thought was really good. It's really picking up steam for the running, so very confident.
You know, we did come in for a bit of stick, Brian, but you know, I think that if you give a view, an opinion, it forms part of a debate, and you're giving the view because you actually believe in it, not because you're trying to get a clickbait argument out of somebody, then I don't mind getting a wee bit of stick about that, right? Because as long as whoever's giving you a bit of stick has got a counter argument, I don't mind it at all. And I actually welcome it in the comment section. And for the best part, the vast majority of those people tuning in are 100%, you know, they behave well, they have a bit of crack, they have a bit of debate. The ones you're referring to, I don't think, well, they are actually, they are Acsom regulars, but they're not Celtic fans, right? and even a title of one of our shows can really throw a cat amongst the pigeons. They are accusing us this week on the socials of going into meltdown. I'm pretty calm. I'm very calm, in fact.
I'm very positive. I think, again, to repeat my point, I think it's definitely a result that benefits us. I think we comfortably, if we'd a bit more clinical, which is, obviously if I really dive in, there's things I can be critical of, but if we'd been more clinical, we'd have been 4-0 up by half time. I mean, it was, we sort of things slid away a little bit in the second half. But, you're going there with into their ground with all their fans under the cloud again for what seems like the 50th time. We're somehow the underdogs and they're going to beat us, and it's the Rangers are coming back, and can you see us now? And I still see it. To paraphrase Rodgers, he's been there plenty of times, and he's still there. And I think it's 5 managers at this point. So, look, it might be the case they beat us at Parkhead, and we'll take that game in isolation. And even if we win the league, it still won't sort of mend some of the issues of this season. There's still a lot to not be happy about as a Celtic fan. But
there's bigger arguments around that, but that we'll get to, Brian, in relation to the Champions League, and obviously the confirmation yesterday that following next season, if Celtic were to win the league next season, we wouldn't automatically progress. So there's a bigger discussion point there that we can't ignore, because that is the accumulation of all these things that you and I and other Acsom contributors and those in the comment section have been banging on about for years. That the lack of investment, the lack of forward thinking, the fact that we do just enough to be the champions of Scotland. And that's why we're in a title fight, right? Because, the recruitment was shambolic in the summer. We've gone over that time and time again. There are hours and hours of that discussion on the archive of Acsom. So, no, you're spot on. But meltdown, what meltdown, Brian?
Yeah, it's nonsense to me. I think what you always see is, a lot of times, particularly, other teams' fans, they give themselves away because they start getting really desperate and really clutching at straws. And that's when they're rattled, because if they're really confident, they wouldn't have to worry. And I always think it's funny, and I think I suggested to you privately, we should do some mock headlines when you do the podcast, because a lot of people that comment with Dogs Abuse don't actually watch it.
No.
We could probably just put some unrelated random tagline as the headline, and just really see a meltdown. But it certainly wouldn't be fair end.
The thing is, so Brian, right, is they're a very needy bunch. They're very needy. They don't get the fix from their own social media channels and from their own podcasts and fan media. So they've got to come on to Acsom. And because they are determined to be, angry, right? So if they wake up and they're not angry enough, and they've not got the battle fever that morning, they stick on Acsom, and we help them along their merry way. So I'm glad that we can help you out in that respect. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. It's always a pleasure on the 12:30 Bulletin. This is something that we started up 4 years ago. We're going to keep going every single weekday, and then every single match day as well. We do cover the games. I'm looking for a way somehow of managing to cover the game and then jump out a Volkswagen Pimp My Ride style wagon and then go to the game and then come back at full time. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but it will happen at some point, Brian. And also, there are other things to look out for on the channel. We've got a Wander every single Monday morning that goes out on the Monday night. And we are working on a new show, which I'm very excited about. It's been in the works for a couple of years. These things take time, Brian, as you know. But this will be a fully produced show. It will be going out at a very interesting time of the week. And I cannot wait to reveal more. But with most things, Brian, you've got to keep a wee bit of it under wraps as well. So really looking forward to that. Loads to discuss. We will be tapping back into the Rangers game with one eye on the weekend as well. The first thing I'm going to ask you about is Callum McGregor, Brian, right? Callum McGregor, for me, I mean, when you get to this age and you then start seeing players' sons playing football and all this kind of stuff, when you get to my age, Brian, you can actually say, I've seen the entire career of this player who's been in the Celtic team for a number of years. Callum McGregor's one of them. Jamesy Forrest, I've seen every single kick of the ball and goal and every honour that Jamesy Forrest has had. And when I was growing up, you never think that's going to happen, Brian, because when Paul McStay turns 27, you think, wow, he's ancient. And now I'm obviously at that age where that is no longer ancient. That would be incredible to still have that youthful spirit. So Callum McGregor, we've seen every single kick of the ball that this kid come man, now Celtic captain, has made in a Celtic jersey. And we're now in a situation where we've got 6 I know it's a cliche, must-win games. McGregor comes back and performs what would probably be described as a cameo against Rangers. I've heard a lot of the old after the event comment saying that we shouldn't have brought him on, we should have brought on Bernardo. When I'm watching the game, Brian, I think we should bring him on. You know, I know what people are saying. I know people are saying it was an emotional decision by Brendan Rodgers because, you know, Callum's back. We should have put Bernardo in because he's 100% fit and sharp. But Callum's the captain. And at the time, I'm thinking, right, we probably need his influence on the park. I was quite happy at the time. What was your take on it?
Similar, actually. I thought the game was crying out for him, to be fair. I thought he's going to come on here. You know, it was getting to be a bit tense. I thought he'd come on with the experience. You know, he'll calm things down. And look, obviously, hindsight's amazing because you look back and say, oh, well, no, that was the wrong decision. But at the time, I'd probably made that call. I think he is such a leader on the park that things are getting tense. We speak so often about the lack of experience in the squad. I think every one of us at one point or another is sort of mentioned it. So if you're captain on the bench at Ibrox, you're going to bring him on. Sadly, obviously, it never quite worked out. And I say, again, it's funny with McGregor because I think he gets more criticism than is deserved as well. For all the plaudits he gets, there's still an element of people that can't get their head around it. And I always find that quite interesting. But for me, the decision I would have made at the time, and I think that, you know, people were blaming him for the goal, and I get it, but there was people that were more culpable. I mean, Yang was a shambles for that third goal, you know, and that's something to highlight, I think. But McGregor, I think in that situation, I think most people have been really honest at the time when they wanted him to come on. And just a quick thing about getting old, Paul. It's funny. I was chatting with my brother the other day. He's a boxer, very, very fit, trains well. And he said to me, he says, bro, you still training? And I said, Dolty, I ran up the other stairs the other day, sneezed, and I thought I put my back out. I says, no, I'm long gone. I says, I'm quite happy to sit and eat biscuits and watch the TV. But it's amazing when you think a couple of years ago and you go, wow, no anymore.
The thing is, Brian, I'm at an age, right? And you said getting old. I am old, right? And I've accepted it. I'm at an age where I want to eat biscuits and watch TV, but I also want to be fit. And I'm thinking I can have both of that, right? I can have both of these things. I can't live like a monk all the time. I can have a wee bit of fun. And my vice is sweet things. There are other vices available. And then go out and run it off and all that kind of stuff. That's where I am in life. I'm going to have a bit of the both. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. I really do appreciate the support of every single one of you. Some you get very used to seeing in the comments section. Some are new. And we are heading towards 16 million views just on the YouTube channel. No one else on the planet has hit 15 million. You have made Acsom the biggest Celtic channel in the world. That is frightening. That's unbelievable, Brian. But we continue to push on. And as I say, we don't rest on our laurels. We want to bring you more content, more programming. And I'm buzzing about this new show. You know, if you all come back and tell me it's rubbish, I'll be gutted because it's taken 2 years to get to this point. We've now found a venue. We're going to be filming very, very soon. And it will be a weekly. So tell us where you're watching the show from. Pod O'Connell, hello from Tipperary. And then we've got Hail from Oslo, Seamus McKenna. This is the beauty of Celtic, supporting Celtic. It's a worldwide thing. And Scott Mason, thank you for supporting the channel. I did a very interesting interview yesterday. From time to time, Brian, people ask you to talk about Celtic. I've always been happy to do so. I remember being in, you know, situations whereby there was family in a house, be that a New Year party or whatever, and the discussion in the chat was always Celtic, your cousins, your uncles, your dad, your brothers, the whole works. And as you get older, you start to intervene and disagree and become part of the conversation. It's something that you do anyway. And I remember during the pandemic coming up with this idea, let's go live every day. And some people were saying, every single day? Aye, every day, 1 hour, talk about Celtic. You'll never fill that hour. 100% you can fill that hour and more. So when people come to me and say, listen, I want to talk to you about Celtic, unless it's a couple of people who are on the blacklist, I will talk about Celtic. So we had an American team contact us yesterday, and we were talking about Giakoumakis, Georgios Giakoumakis. And what happens is because you often get lost in the here and now, Brian, You know, it's nice sometimes to go back and delve into the impact or otherwise of a specific player. So I was looking at Giakoumakis before obviously talking to the guys. And I've got to say, Giakoumakis left a positive impression on me as a Celtic fan, because I'm now obviously looking back on his entirety of his career. I'm looking at him. He was inexpensive when we signed him. He came in as the Dutch top division's top goal scorer, and he got all those goals with a relegated team. You know, he scored 4 goals and 3 goals all in a month. He was second only to Marco van Basten in the Dutch league in terms of the most goals scored in a calendar month. He was, for me, a player that we could have been doing with at certain points this season, Brian. 26 when he came in. One of the biggest disappointments is the way it ended, I think. What's your kind of view when you look back on Giakoumakis?
Oh, I loved him. I absolutely loved him. I think I liked his celebration because I got to see him with his top off, because the big man was a unit, wasn't he?
He was a specimen, yes.
He was a specimen, aye. But you know, he was excellent. I think that I remember when he first joined and people weren't sure. I think he had that penalty at Livingston. Remember?
Yeah, not in each game.
And everyone's, oh, this guy's a donkey, he's useless. But I sort of thought, oh, this something here this guy's got, and it's a different dynamic that we hadn't had for a wee bit. And I thought he was excellent. You know, seemed to score the first time shots all the time.
That was an incredible record, wasn't it? That one touch goal.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's funny, we talk a lot about, you know, we've said before, I think we all sort of agreed Kyogo's, you know, possibly the best striker since Larsson. And I said I think he's the most effective striker. And what I mean by that is, I think when you looked at the way we played, Kyogo was tailor-made for it, and therefore was the most effective. But I think there's an argument Giakoumakis was, you know, just as effective. I think actually in their first full season together, they were the joint top goal scorers. You know, completely different style of player, but it just shows you that the system we were playing at the time was more important than the individual in a lot of cases. But to your point, yeah, it was so disappointing when he left, because I felt like he got it as well.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these players come and go, and some of them embrace the club, some of them don't. You've got guys like Donati, who might not have had the greatest time in the park, but just absolutely loved the club and got it. And Mark Krosas as well, who's a player I thought was
a great example.
Talented.
Yeah, great example.
Absolutely loves the place, and Dembele as well. And I think that Giakoumakis looked like he was going to be one of those guys. So it was a wee bit sad to see him go, but yeah, you can only look back with good memories.
I always remember, because I was asked yesterday, you know, best memory of Giakoumakis in a Celtic jersey. It was in a game that he didn't score, right? And it was in the February game. It was February the 2nd, 22. And we beat them 3-0 at Celtic Park. That was the night where it was exclusively Celtic fans, Brian, in the stadium. And Jim Orr, you know, maintains to this day that he prefers it that way because the atmosphere was electric that night. And Giakoumakis was unbelievable. The only thing he didn't do was score. I think there was 3 or 4 saves that night that, in the first half, by the way, that Giakoumakis might have had a hat-trick on another night. We absolutely rattled him, and he was a massive part of that. He scores a Champions League goal prior to Kyogo getting on the score sheet in the Champions League. And I just think it was a shame the way it ended. I don't think we got enough money when we sold him either. I think we got about €4 million. Not sure if there was a clause in the contract. But great to see him doing well at over in MLS at Atalanta. I think that, you know, Atlanta, not Atalanta, that's a completely different country, Paul. In fact, that's a different region entirely, different continent. Yes, he's doing well at Atlanta and scoring goals. He got the best newcomer award, and he won it over Messi. Unbelievable. So the guys were asking me, who do you support in MLS? I was like, not really anybody. I mean, I had to explain, Brian, that if you support Celtic, you're all in. You can't have a mistress. You're all in on Celtic. That's it. And I went back to the old shooting match interviews where it was asking guys like Tommy Burns and Peter Grant, who's your favourite second team? Celtic reserves. You know, that was it. Nothing beyond that, you know. Excuse me. So Giakoumakis was a conversation yesterday, and today I noticed that O celebrates a birthday because O, of course, had been brought into the club and may have been brought into the club in the fullness of time to replace the Giakoumakis figure. And it's not quite worked out. So I'm looking at O and the fact that he's disappeared from view, Brian. But worse than that, somebody was talking yesterday about James McCarthy because McCarthy was involved in the Giakoumakis goal against St Johnstone McDermott, which I had shared on Twitter. Someone mentioned him, and I knew off the top of my head he hadn't played a game of football this season under Brendan, but neither has Kobayashi or Siegrist. These three guys have not contributed a single minute of football to Celtic's title challenge. That's really poor, isn't it? I mean, that's bad squad management.
Oh, it's a disgrace. And we called this in the summer. We said, there's too many players that aren't contributing. Something has to be done. And it's some of the ridiculous decisions. I remember at one point, I think McCarthy was offered a move away, but Celtic wanted to get more percentage of his wages. So instead of just letting them go and paying some of his wages, they kept him and paid all of them. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So very, very strange. And I think that when you look at these guys, and I think he's been a bit unfortunate. People say someone at one point was saying he was better than Giakoumakis. Never subscribed to that. I thought, at times he looked okay, but very, very raw. But ultimately, that's not good enough for Celtic. I mentioned him earlier, Yang. People say similar about Yang. Oh, there's a player in there. And it's like, well, I don't want a player to be in there. I want a player to be in the park and ready and good to go now. And he's already having a project where you go, they're decent, but it can be very, very good. No, there's a player somewhere in there. We need to give them the chance. And it's like, potential's great, but when you're playing for Celtic and you're trying to progress domestically, you're trying to improve in Europe, you've got to be ready to come in there and contribute right away. And I think it's clear that Rodgers doesn't fancy O. I think it's likely Rodgers isn't going anywhere for a while. So you imagine O is going to be probably off, or at least maybe a loan. You don't know. He might be one of those guys actually that benefits from a loan.
I think so.
And gets a real, plays every week for somebody and really does well and sort of homes himself. And it's not a player I'm desperate to get rid of as such, but I think it's fair to say he's not really lived up to, because he's been here long enough now. He should have made more of an impact, and he should have been saying, why is Ono starting? And quite honestly, I think this is one of the first times we've spoken about him this season, really.
Exactly.
Which is indicative of things that haven't quite worked out. And just when you talk about strikers, I can't remember who it was in the comments section. We said, Kyogo's the most effective since Larson. Somebody saying DeBelly, Griffith, get all that. But Sonny's nailed it right in the head. We've been wrong all along. Carrot and Cole is the most effective, the best striker since Larson apparently. So there you go. Brilliant.
Maybe we'll get the Carlton Cole on the new show. Maybe he will be one of the special guests.
Maybe.
By the way, it might happen if he's in Glasgow playing the Masters or something, and he's at a loose end. I might drag him in now. On the subject of O, obviously we got on there because I was talking about Giakoumakis yesterday. We signed O for roughly the same price that we signed Giakoumakis. Okay, and Giakoumakis came to the club. As I said, he was a top goal scorer in the Eredivisie. I think that's how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, I write good effort. If not, Paul, I'll give you that one. Fair play to you.
Say it with confidence and people will believe you, right? So he was a top goal scorer even though his team got relegated. So you're looking at that thinking, right, he's got something. But if you look further back than that, he hadn't really set the world alight in terms of goal scoring at all these clubs previous to that. He had played for a while in Poland, and he had also played loads of football, of course, in Greece, various clubs in Greece, 141 appearances, 25 goals in Greece. In Poland, he had scored 3 goals in 12 games. And it was only when he went to Dutch football that he looked like this goal scorer. So he scores 29 goals and gets 2 assists in 33 games for a club that got relegated. Unbelievable. Comes to Celtic, scores 17 and 29, which was actually a goal or assist every 82 minutes. And then in the following season, where obviously him and Ange don't see eye to eye and he doesn't get the same game time, he scores 9 goals in 28 games, which was a goal or assist every 104 minutes. Oh, so what I'm saying here is we paid the money. That was the impact we got. He contributed to a double. He actually contributed to the treble. And I actually think during the double winning season, had he not been injured in the Scottish Cup semi-final game against Rangers, having looked back in the February match where he absolutely ragdolled them and bossed them, I think the outcome would have been different on that occasion. You then look at O and you think, right, let's give him time. Okay, we've spent the same money as we did roughly on Giakoumakis. O is 23. today. He's the same age as Matt O'Reilly, right? And you look at Matt O'Reilly and the way that he is pivotal to this Celtic side, and you think to yourself, Brian, at this stage of his development, isn't where he should be. Brendan Rodgers might not want to write him off because of the age of him. If he's 28, it's a different story because of the age of him. And I tend to agree with you. I think in the summer, we look to maybe loan him out and get him game time. That will lead us on to the question of Ida and Bernardo, the two loanees, of course. And someone has brought up another loanee in the comments section. Here's the klaxon. It's the Mikey Johnson klaxon. It's Seamus McKenna. What about our Mikey, English Championship Player of the Month? Had the winger we are missing all along. Seamus, thank you for bringing this up. I disagree. Yeah. I don't think that under any circumstances, under any manager playing any style of football, that Mikey Johnson will come back to Celtic and replicate the form that he's showing at West Bromwich Albion. Now, I can't explain exactly why, because I don't know the makeup of the individual. I can only speak through the experience of watching the player since he broke into the Celtic team. Going back to what we said about Callum, Brian, you've seen every kick of the ball this player has had. You've seen the big moments that he could have had. You're talking cup finals, one-on-one with the goalie against Rangers and he misses. The big moments. You've seen him getting chance after chance after chance under a number of different managers and never quite making the grade at Celtic. Why that happens, I don't know. I can throw out a speculative answer on that one. I can go back to what you mentioned about mentality. I can say that, if he's not done it now, he never will. I can also comment on the fact that for the 7 pre-seasons that Acsom has been in existence, we've had this conversation about Mikey. I would flip, by the way, Seamus, I respect your view, but my view is different. And I would say that if we get any offer of £3 million plus for Mikey Johnson, you take it. You absolutely take it. Brian, where are you on this one?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because I was going to make a comparison between Mikey Johnson and O, which sounds bizarre, but the comparison was going to be, clearly Mikey Johnson's a good player, right? I don't think anyone said he's rotten. I don't think anyone said he's not a good player. He is, but he's just never worked for him at Celtic, and sometimes that can happen. Might be the same with O. O might go somewhere else and absolutely smash it. How many players have you seen that have been, quality players, come to Celtic and just no be able to do it? It's a club that with so much pressure, so much weight on your shoulders, some players just can't do it. And it's no harm to them. Like, I hope Mikey Johnson has a stellar career. I really do. By all accounts, he's a lovely boy. I hope he does really, really well. No harm against him.
Is he a beautiful human being?
I imagine he's a beautiful human being. Beautiful, beautiful human being. But I just think he's not going to date Celtic. Some players it just doesn't quite work out the way, and that's all right. That's okay. Like look at Shane Duffy, the classic example.
Yep.
A player who on paper, Republic Island defender, big physical presence we're always asking for, played in the Premier League most of his career, didn't work out for him. There's some things just don't work, and that's okay. And I think, I think sometimes when you're maybe analysing a player, like Joe Hart's a good example. I thought Joe Hart's been pretty good this season, actually, comparatively speaking. I think he's done better this season than last. I think the game's been a bit simpler for him. Still think we need an improvement. Still think, clearly he's not going to have a future because he's retiring, but, just because you think you need an improvement doesn't mean you're hammering the player necessarily. And Mikey Johnson's like that. I don't think anyone's been really negative about him in terms of his personality or his ability to play, but it's just not working for him, and that's all right.
It is, and you move him on, and you bring in an amount of cash that before that West Bromwich Albion deal, we would never have been able to bring in £3 million for Mikey Johnson. It was at that kind of stage where it was surplus to requirements. Brendan Rodgers had more than his fair share of minutes with him, giving him plenty of chances. He signs off with a couple of goals against Dundee. We bid him farewell. That is the way I see his career going. I would love in the future to see him starring for Ireland. I would love to see Ireland getting back to the Ireland that I watched growing up and getting into the finals of tournaments and being an underdog but doing it really well and having a couple of star players. That was the Ireland that I remember. And I hope he is part of a team both at club and international level where he fits and he has great success. this season, if you look at his contribution under Brendan Rodgers, he has played a total of 725 minutes. He's now not getting a place on the bench. Obviously, Ida is getting the vote over him. Ida seems to be one of Brendan's players in terms of who identified him and brought him to the club. Again, we speculate a wee bit, but you can look at things like, who did Ange Postecoglou sign for Celtic? All right, well, he signed all the Japanese guys, right, because he had that insight into that market. He signed Moy. Did he sign Starfelt? Don't know. Matt O'Reilly? Nah, he was presented to Celtic as a signing option. So I'm not saying it's easy, but there are certain players you can say, yeah, he was within our system. Abada. Did Ange Postecoglou identify Abada? Probably not. It was probably through the same channels that we signed Ilhamid and all these other players from Israel. And there's a player that's presented to us, and he would have the final say, of course. And it worked out well. Ida seems to be a Brendan Rodgers signing, and he's done really, really well. And I think we should talk a wee bit about him and the other loanee, Brian, and Paulo Bernardo. There's going to have to be a decision made at the end of the season. I know we've got an option to buy on Bernardo, but not on Ida. Doesn't mean to say you don't sign both players. You can still go in with an offer. There just isn't that option tied into the loan deal. What's your take on it? Because Bernardo's been up and down. I think Ida's done pretty well since he came in, to be fair. But obviously, Kyogo stepped up, took his jersey back. Where are you? I mean, is it all down to the price? Are we talking, if you got offered both players for £4 or £5 million each, would you take them?
It's funny that, because £4 or £5 million sounds like a lot of money these days, but it's really not. So go with Ida first, I think. As long as Norwich aren't asking for anything outrageous, I think you would keep him. We spoke about Giakoumakis, and I don't think it's as good as Giakoumakis, or certainly maybe not yet, but he's got a similar presence. Big, strong guy, fast as well for his size.
Yeah.
His movements, I think, are a wee bit better than people give him credit for, actually. I think he's quite clever movement on the ball, and I think it's a different prospect to Kyogo. So there's loads of reasons, but I think he absolutely gets it. Not just because of the Irish thing, he seems to really get it. The players seem to like him, and I think he's got a bit of fire about him, a bit of aggression that we lack. So I think I'd like to see how he does in Europe. I think he'd be quite suited to Europe, just in terms of that sheer physicality. So I think it's $4 million, whatever. I think you buy it. Bernardo's a strange one, because I can't quite figure out how I feel about Bernardo. He's one of those players that he's better off the ball than on it, I think. And I just don't know where he fits in the dynamic, because people are saying maybe he's going to be a replacement for O'Reilly, but he doesn't play like O'Reilly. He's not as forward thinking. He's a bit more defensive, but he's a bit of a goal threat as well, bizarrely. So again, he might be good for Europe, because we saw this season he played in Europe most of the games, actually. He wasn't getting played in the SPFL, but he played in Europe, which was an unusual decision. But it depends how much they're looking for. I think I've heard $6 million.
Yeah.
The face that goes $6 million is a lot for Bernardo. I don't know. But then, who are you getting that's better for $6 million? So it is a strange one. I think it depends what happens in the summer. But if say you look at Hatate, right, how much we've missed Hatate in terms of his creativity. O'Reilly's been chipping in because he can sort of defend, attack. He's a real box to box. He can be all over the place. Bernardo's neither of them, and he's not really like McGregor either. So I don't quite know where the dynamic works. Obviously, Brendan, depending on what he's thinking about for next season, he may think he's perfect for whatever way he wants to play. At the moment, I'm not sure. So I think I would keep Ida as long as the price isn't too crazy. But Bernardo, I'm not sure about, if I'm honest. I think he's a good player, and I think he's the type who can show up a bit. But do we need that in our squad? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm going to say that on the Mikey Johnson stroke Adam Eder thing, right? You're looking at that championship table down south, and you've got a player who's absolutely flying in Mikey Johnson, right? He's getting goals, he's getting awards for Player of the Month. West Brom are sitting 5th at the moment, and they've played the same games as Norwich, who are sitting just below them in 6th. Adam Eder was surplus to requirements at Norwich, so I don't know in terms of the valuation of a player for Norwich City who's not getting a game, and where about that is in the ballpark of what you could get for Mikey Johnson. But there's a team who are seeing Mikey Johnson in the flesh. You know, that they're both fighting for the kind of same position in the league at the moment. Hopefully, we can see that as an opportunity. And if we're doing business with Norwich, there's a boy there. There's a make weight. I thought the same actually when it came to the supposed interest in Miofsky at Aberdeen. I was looking at that and thinking, right, what about David Turnbull? David Turnbull would be a great signing for Aberdeen. I know that the player has to agree to it. I know that Aberdeen have to meet the wages and all that kind of stuff, which is probably why it was a no-go. But when you're looking at West Brom and Norwich, similar position in the league, Brian, you're thinking, we want to do a bit of business with Norwich here. We're going to be doing some business with West Bromwich Albion. Why not do a bit of business with Norwich and bring Mikey Johnston into the equation? When it comes to Bernardo, the one thing I keep going back to, right, and I know that his performances have been up and down. There's been a bit of a lack of consistency. Done really, really well for Ida's goal at the weekend. Him and Ida came on and made an impression at the weekend. My thing with Bernardo is he's been in the building for a year. By the time we come to that decision, and we know what he's capable of, and it's not just the ability side of it, Brian, it goes back to your initial point, it's the mentality side of it. We know what he can and can't do at that stage, so it's much less of a risk. Even if the fee's 6 million, it's much less of a risk. Because by that stage, you're 2 years after spending 6 million on Jota. You're 2 years after spending 6 million on Carter Vickers. So it's not even as much money as it was back then. So I totally agree with you. It's not a great deal of money, especially when your aspiration should be in European football. 6 million quid's not a great deal of money. I mean, come on, we were spending that 25 years ago almost, 24 years ago.
It goes back to the dynamic, Paul. It goes back to that dynamic midfield, because if you're looking at what Bernardo offers, I say, so for me, I look at it and I go, you know, he's no, I don't think he's as creative as O'Reilly or Hatate. So are we doing a step back to keeping him? Or do we say, well, what we do is we make him sort of the bedrock and build creative players around him? So I don't know what the plans will be. It's very interesting. But I think what I would say about him is the same as Jota and Carter Vickers. Whenever we're recruiting players who have got a price tag sort of north of 5-6 million, we should be doing loan to buys. Because say, like, you know, even Jota, when he was there, and at the time we weren't sure we'd have paid the money for him and Carter Vickers. I think a lot of discussion was about one or the other. But we knew what we were getting, and we knew it was safe money. So even if we spent 9 million on him, you more than made that back, and it'd been worth it. So there is that argument to have. For me personally, Bernardo's such a strange one, because to your point, he has been there for a year, but there's so many games he hasn't played. And you'd have thought, well, if he's going to be a starter, he should be starting, right? Especially when Hatate's injured, but he's been kind of in and out. And so I'm unsure why. You know, I think whoever we're buying this season, they have to be able to walk straight into the team. They have to be either better than what we've got or as good at a minimum. And I think in our strongest midfield, he doesn't get over Hatate, O'Reilly, or McGregor for me. So I'm thinking, if we're getting him, is he just going to be a squad player? Because that's quite a lot of money for a squad player. So that's where I'm sort of unsure, if I'm honest. I wouldn't be disappointed if he stayed, because you know, I'd like to see how he does under Brendan, but I don't think I'd be, you know, flying the flag to spend a lot of money on him.
The other thing as well, Brian, is the likelihood is we'll need to buy another midfielder anyway, because of obviously the Martin developing situation. We would then have a look at who else we brought in relation to that area of the park. Odin Holm, where is he in his development? Kwon, where is he in his development? Have they made it? Are they going to make it? And you know, the big answer for me is no on both of them. I see something in Odin Holm that I think could be developed. I'm not even sure if it's. Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's next season though, Brian.
No, but do you know what's interesting? Is he sort of, I think he was interviewed and he said he didn't expect to start much this season. I think it's probably made clear that he wasn't going to feature that much, which I was surprised to hear. I think there's a player there, but again, it depends on what the dynamics are going to look like next season. One of the things I wanted to bring up actually was Bossing Law and Kelly.
Yeah.
Because it feels like, and it's to my point about buying squad players, it feels like these two guys, Law's had a really good season at Fleetwood, and I know it's a level down, but big physical player, strong, fast, good in the ball. Kelly, I think, looked decent when he's played. I think there's a player there as well. Again, good physicality. surely they're going to be. You don't need to buy project players if you've got those two. I think coming back. So ending it with buying, whether that be Bernardo or someone else, has to be a starter. And I think that's something that I hope Rodgers is really thinking about. I suspect he probably is, because I think Big Lol and even the lads in the Austrian club, I know Toby Oyemi started. I think he started a few games now. I think he's injured for a bit, and then the boy Anderson as well looks to be doing okay. So it'll be interesting to see how these guys, when they come back fit, because although we talk a lot about guys like Kwon, Big Kwon's going to be a cult player at some point, and he's going to do something spectacular in pre-season. We're going to want to keep him. But we talk a lot about these guys and McCarthy's and Kobayashi's and stuff, but I'm really interested how these younger guys that are out on loan fit in next season, because it does feel like Brendan's got a wee bit of a point to prove. Because we were quite critical, I think a lot of people were, that with Vata we spoke about a lot not playing, but
yeah,
I think he's really used Kelly as an example of no, if you're good enough, I'll play you. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out next season, and I hope to see more of it.
No, you're right. The two players are at Admiral Wacker. That's the name of the club, isn't it? Talking about Rocco Vata, did you see that his dad, Rudy, is working on his memoirs? He's releasing an autobiography. I think that would be a stunning story about football and freedom. The subtitle goes along those lines, because we all know the story of Rudy, obviously at that time in the late 80s, coming from Albania, he chose the route of seeking asylum when Albania's under-21s were playing France. And he fled the stadium, him and another two players, straight to the local police station and sought asylum in France. Ended up playing lower league football in France, sleeping homeless in train stations and all this kind of stuff, until he got a contract. Later on down the line, Liam Brady sees him playing for Albania's national side against Ireland and brings him over to Celtic. And as they say, the rest is history. He is a cult player. We don't know yet how Rocco is going to turn out. I would love to see Rocco having a career at Celtic, but I'm pretty sure that that'll all become clear in the summer months. But a great point in relation to Lawal coming back, and hopefully, if a player like Kwon and O, maybe even put them to the same club. Brian, and get them more game time. In relation then to Callum McGregor, he comes on, doesn't play brilliant, looked off the pace. This is all with hindsight, because I was happy when he came on. Do you start him against St Mirren? This is my question, right? Because Hatate's just coming maybe up to the point where he plays 90 minutes against St Mirren. I would expect that's where Hatate is. McGregor is probably 2 or 3 weeks behind that. So does he start, or do you bring him on for another half an hour tomorrow?
I mean, I don't think you start him. I think just because similar to also Brendan's decision making with him and Hatate, because obviously Hatate's probably going to be back to full fitness, to your point, against St Mirren, but with Awata, again, he's normally seemed to get criticised. I thought he'd done pretty well. I think he's done pretty well anytime he's played. I think he probably starts, and then McGregor comes on just to build up, maybe even for the second half, depending on what the score is. But yeah, it's always interesting when it's your captain. I think if it was any other player, you'd maybe think, no, he probably doesn't start until he's super fit. But sometimes with your captain, I think there's that extra thing to say, no, get him on and let him conduct the game and see. So I'm really not sure. It really depends what he's doing in training. Apparently, he only trained half a session the other day, I heard someone saying.
Right.
Which is maybe a concern. Maybe they're thinking that maybe he's not quite as ready as he thought he was. Because I imagine McGregor's the type of guy that's desperate to get back. I think, out of any, we've spoken mentality a lot, but I think out of any player, if you're him sitting on that bench, it must be devastating. So I imagine maybe he's trying to push himself a bit harder than maybe sensible. So it'd be interesting to see. But again, look, like anything, if he starts the game, I'm not going to be going, I can't believe he's starting. I'll be happy. I'll be delighted to see him back. You just need to sort of, I suppose, trust that the club's going to do what they think's right in terms of the team overall.
Yeah, because I mean, Hatate was thrown in after just a bounce game against St Mirren. Maybe if McGregor starts, it wouldn't surprise me if he comes off after 60 minutes. So it's a question of, does he start, or does he get the last half hour? And we'll find out more, obviously. Tomorrow, Who's the Snitch? Welcome to the show. You are commenting on the YouTube. Hail, hail, gentlemen. Good afternoon to you also. James Kerwin, you're also commenting on the YouTube. Cracking picture on the avatar. That is a belter. That is a cracking image. Look at that. You would think with camera technology, face recognition, etc., it should not be hard to find a culprit or culprits who choose to throw missiles at players on the pitch. This is a situation, Brian, right? And I don't care about the reaction on social media, in case you hadn't noticed, right? I'm very strong in my opinion when it comes to this, right? People keep saying to me, certain people from a certain fan base keep saying to me, oh, everybody's got this problem. You're as bad as us and all this nonsense, right? And it is nonsense. I know that there are isolated or random instances where, for example, right, someone throws a bottle of Powerade at Barry Mackay taking a corner for Hearts, right? I get it. It's happened. We're no angels, right? 100%. But there's not a situation or a trend of constant missiles being thrown at all and sundry from one fan base in one stadium. And that's why I have listed the unsafe nature of players, staff, coaches, referees, the whole thing, supporters. And I'm pretty strong in my views on it because it is an issue, Brian. It's not just a societal issue that, oh, we're just like everybody else here and all this kind of nonsense. And some of the examples I was being given, even today, was a coin getting thrown at Hugh Dallas 25 years ago. Right, okay. So that justifies someone throwing a bottle of Buckfast at Matt O'Reilly on Sunday, i.e., 5 days ago. That justifies it. The fact that someone threw a coin, some numbskull threw a coin 25 years ago at the referee. Nonsense. The person who threw the coin should not have thrown the coin, 100%. But that's 25 years ago. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the scenario as it is right now, Brian. And it is an issue. And I sometimes wonder if the clubs are facilitating the process of investigation well enough, right? Because we all know that certain things can happen at the highest level of investigation, CCTV unavailable, overwritten, etc., etc., etc. WhatsApp messages of Rangers players celebrating and singing a certain song. Oh, wait a minute, someone put that song over there. It's been dubbed. Oh, aye, sure. We know that goes on behind the scenes, Brian. I don't think enough's been done by the club themselves. I don't expect them to do much more, to be honest with you. Celtic have raised 2 complaints, one for the bottle being thrown at Matt, one for coins and other missiles being thrown at the dugout, particularly at John Kennedy. I don't think the authorities are strong enough. All I'm hearing all week, Brian, is about some guy talking about playing a game of football on Mars. This is the story that the media are picking up on, right? The biggest story in Scottish football is the missiles and VAR and the inability of VAR to either get used properly or even work properly. We're not alone in our condemnation of VAR. Aberdeen have now joined us at the table for that discussion. So it's frustrating for me, Brian. And I think that when you talk about narratives, and we talk about that a lot on a Celtic State of Mind, look at the narrative this week. The narrative is Dundee are the culprits of the biggest sin in Scottish football this week because they have invested their money on the park rather than on the pitch in terms of personnel. They have been made out to be the villain this week in Scottish football, when the real villain is those who think it's all right to throw missiles on a football pitch, and VAR, the introduction of which, the operation of which, and what goes next. I mean, some people, some high-profile pundits in Scotland are saying scrap it. They're the 2 big stories. Not playing a game of football in Mars and saying Dundee are the bad guys, Brian. And I think that we're going to get to a point now. I said earlier on in the show, and it's not because I'm trying to lord it over anybody else. I'm proud of the fact that Acsom and the community of people that tune into Acsom have put us in a position where we are on the cusp of hitting 16 million views on YouTube, tens of millions of views on the audio, listens on the audio, tens of millions of views on the Twitter live, all this kind of stuff, right? So you get to the point where you can build a platform where your voice is heard and it becomes heard by more people, Brian. And I think we're getting to that point where the circulation and the viewership and the readership of mainstream media is on a downward trajectory, and fan media, alternative media, rogue media, whatever you want to call it, is on an upward trajectory. There's going to come a point where they meet, if that hasn't happened already, and then you actually overcome the influence of the mainstream. It becomes a legacy media. And I think in the future what will happen is there'll just be media. And the media could be some guy on their mobile phone streaming. If they get a big enough audience, then they're part of media. And it can be done badly, it can be done well, regardless of your budget. So that's my take on it. Again, strong views on the narrative this week. Why does nobody call it out? Other than fan media at the moment, Brian. Why does nobody else call that out?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So in terms of the fan media point, I think that what sets Acsom apart from some is it's not an echo chamber. Very often, contributors disagree on things and have different views, but it's done in a respectful way. And same with the comments, there's been people disagreeing with things I've said today. They've been very respectful about it. I get their point. That's okay. And I think that's where the difference is. I've seen some, people, saying that, the media's done this, the media's done that, but we've always known it. And this is part of the problem. It's the fact that these things we're talking about, you could go back 10 years, same conversations, 20 years, same conversations, and I think there's this facilitation of this new narrative that's consistent. So we talk about Rangers and the throwing of things, right? So I'll tell you now, where I grew up, and some of my very close friends are Rangers fans, and all I poke fun at Rangers and stuff. They're brilliant guys, and I love them, my friends. And they might not admit it publicly, but they're embarrassed by that stuff as well. Most good football fans are. Where I think is embarrassing is when the clubs themselves refuse to condemn it.
Yeah.
Because what that does is, to my point, it facilitates doing it more. Because they're not getting pulled up for it. And the biggest thing the club's got to be worried about is the park at Dens Park at Dundee, and know the fact that they're throwing glass bottles at people, know the fact they're attacking staff, know the fact that they're singing songs that, are ridiculous, know the fact that, this hate speak feels rubbish because we're going to get caught saying stuff we shouldn't be saying. Well, just don't say it.
Brian,
right?
did you say that? Just don't
say it. It's simple, right? It's a stupid thing to say. And the club, Rangers say, well, but Dundee are the bad genes. What are you talking about? It's absolute nonsense. And I tell you what, for people that think I'm being biased, see if Celtic fans have been doing that, behaving that way, and Celtic had acknowledged it, I'd be just as critical of them. Because you need to have standards, you need to set yourself out a certain way and be accountable and be responsible. And that's on the park and off it. And when you're not, you allow these things to fester. It's like the refereeing in the VAR you also spoke about. For so long we've been saying, whether it's conscious bias, unconscious bias, lack of training, neglect, this has never been called out and sorted. And it's going to continue. I guarantee you in 5 years' time, we'll start talking about behaviour of fans. Some of the songs are singing, glass bottles getting thrown, and referees, making crazy decisions, because it's not going to get fixed. And it's not going to fix, to your point, because people don't want to talk about it. There was a brilliant interview with Aidan McGeady, and your man for the BBC, and he said, that he get dogs abuse at Ibrox and Tynecastle all the time, and nobody ever said anything about it. And the guy said, "Oh, why is that?" He said, "Well, you know why it is. You know why it is. Neil Lennon called it out one time before, and he said, you call it sectarianism, I call it racism." It wasn't a story; it was a non-story. It's madness. In no other country in the world would that be tolerated.
And it can be. You're talking about,
unless your name's James McLean and it's tolerated down south. But that aside, it's a lack of consistency for the powers that be, whether that be the SFA, the mainstream media, or Rangers themselves, to police this and stop it out. Instead, they want to complain about other ridiculous things and have sound bites about Mars instead of someone potentially getting hurt really badly. Remember, it was only last season, I think, as well, where Joe Hart had glass in his goal line.
2022, yeah.
2022,
this is the thing, right? For me, Brian, you're talking about in 5 years' time, and I'm sitting, and that saddens me that the situation wouldn't improve, right? But go back 6 years, 2018, that's the game when Lee Griffiths, when celebrating Boyata's goal in the 5-1 win at Ibrox, picks up a battery that if it collides with your head is going to cause some damage. He gets booked for bringing that to the attention. It was the same with the bottle of bucket at Linfield, different team, different game. He got booked for bringing that to the attention of the referee. And It's not changed in 5 years. That was the same game, incidentally, where a fan ran onto the pitch and attacked Scott Brown, or tried to. Nothing's changed because it's never been dealt with. And this is it. And whilst you don't deal with it, they will run wild. And every so often, somebody is identified, like the time the Celtic physio was hitting the head with a bottle, the culprit was identified, he was given 12 months in prison. So there needs to be a deterrent for that type of behaviour, Brian. And for anybody sitting watching this thinking, aye, but Gordon Strachan got attacked on the park in 1984, because seriously, that's what somebody says to me on Twitter the other day. Have a look at yourself. This is a situation in the here and now, real time, that can be dealt with here and now, real time. And it needs to be dealt with. And like you say, when it comes to Celtic, we are very critical. It doesn't go down well with the club. We're probably on the naughty step alongside Haksabanovic, but we've got to be truthful to ourselves, Brian. So if you see something you're unhappy with, we always call it out on here.
And I think, you've always got to hold things to an account. And what I hate, and I know spoke about it eloquently and brilliantly on Wednesday, but people using point scoring for things is ridiculous. If something's wrong, it's wrong. It doesn't matter if it's Celtic, it doesn't matter if it's Rangers, it doesn't matter who it is. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And things need to be held accountable, and that's just the way it is. There's no point in saying, well, but you've done it. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what Rangers do, doesn't matter what Celtic do. If you've done something wrong, hold yourself to account for it. Don't be blaming other people for it. Don't be going, but they done this, so it's all right. It's not all right. It's never all right. And that's something that it's a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. Because people can't have that, opinion. And, without getting too much on my high horse, it's like, Brexit. People talk about Brexit, and they can admit it was wrong. It's like, see, you voted for Brexit, fine. You can still say it's no what. It's all right. You don't always have to be right. You can call things out for being wrong. It's all right. And football's the same. And it's a cultural thing that riles me, because when you don't take accountability for things, whether personally or professionally, it's a weakness of character, and it's a weakness of spirit. In point scoring and pointing the finger at somebody else and but you've done this, it's never good. And I think that as long as that continues, and as long as incidents go unpunished and things are made acceptable, whether that be insane referee appointments, which I think we've got time to talk about, VAR decisions that have been shambolic. I think Aberdeen's statement was excellent the other day, by the way. I think they've done really well with that. And assaults on players and staff. As long as that's allowed to continue, it will certainly not improve. Accountability has to be paramount.
When I bring these things up, Brian, often the arguments you get are ridiculous. It gets to the point where you realise very quickly that these people are blinded by it. They don't want to see the truth, and therefore there really isn't a discussion to be had on it. But obviously, we continually get that level of abuse and toxicity on the social media channels. Flip side of that, here's a bit of positivity for you. It's coming on the YouTube. We've got Mickey Boy 80 coming in. I'm coming up to the game tomorrow from Tamworth with Coventry, Emerald, CSC, and my two wee boys, and I'm buzzing about the last 6 league games. Phenomenal. I love it.
Man.
Mickey Boy.
Hopefully, one other bit of positivity for you, Paul. So, in an effort to do a bit of good and keep myself in shape, I've been promoting a wee bit of charity, which I know is something that's obviously very close to Acsom's heart. So, for cancer research, you might have seen it on social media, every day in April, I'll be doing 100 press-ups per day, which for those watching is exactly as fun as it sounds, but it's for a good cause. So it's, Paul very kindly volunteered to share some of the details online. If anyone feels like putting a wee donation in, brilliant. It's not for me, obviously, it's for cancer research, it's for a great cause. And what's really nice is there's certain things that unify people, whether that be in the comment section, football, whatever. Acsom contributors are excellent for it. Is that bringing together for charity, for good causes. Mm-hmm. So that's my small contribution. But I think when we're calling out things that, are wrong about clubs, are wrong about football, wrong about society, one thing that is right is the way people pull together for a good cause. So hopefully we can do that as well this time. And I appreciate any support we can give.
Fair play to you, Brian. We will be sharing this not only in the description of this video, but on the social media channels with the link to make a donation if you're able to as well. We're all affected by cancer at some point, Brian. So fair play to you as well, because if you can get a wee bit of fitness out of it as well, Brian, I want to see the footage. Just like Jungle Lion says, where's the footage? Where's the CCTV? The incidents happened in the main stand. Security cameras everywhere. But that balloon talks about playing on Mars. I know. You're right. He's talking about playing on Mars. It's crazy, crazy stuff. It's not even a good soundbite. Gordon Coney, afternoon, lads. It seems apparent that in Scotland, calling someone a good girl creates more headlines and outrage than throwing glass bottles at people. Strange wee country we live in. Right. What I would do, Gordon, if you get time, is obviously, as well as the stream and the content we put on the YouTube, we have a blog, and Kevin McCluskey wrote a fantastic blog actually on that very subject, and
Excellent.
how Brendan Rodgers was treated compared to wee cheeky chappy Ali McCoist. Have a read of it. Let us know what you think. It was a brilliantly written piece by Kevin. Got to thank Kevin McCluskey for that. He often is my right-hand man when it comes to the old match day, so hopefully I can catch up with him over the weekend. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. There are just 18 tickets left for Martin O'Neill. Brian Degnan can tell you just how good he is on the stage. Someone on the Facebook said, commented this morning, I find him a bit boring. You've not seen him live then, because he's anything but boring, Brian. 18 tickets to go. Link underneath the video. Come and see him. And just yesterday, in fact, just this morning, I announced that basically the running order of the evening is as follows. If you were lucky enough to get a VIP ticket, and there's only 40 people able to do that and sold within 24 hours, you meet Martin, you get your photograph taken, you get an item signed complimentary from Acsom. You get a wee bit of time to speak to the guy. Then at 8 o'clock, we are on stage, myself and Martin O'Neill. Great privilege to join him on stage. Leading up to that, we've got Davy McKendrick on the live music. So Davy will be playing some choice tracks leading up to Martin getting on the stage. After 45 minutes, he will take a wee break. During that 45 minutes, my discussion is accompanied with video content. So we have video on the big screen, getting you in the mood for what we're about to discuss. Tremendous memories. Half-time, more music from Davy, charitable auction. We're back on the stage, and then the crowd have got an opportunity to ask Martin their own questions. So it's a great night. It's a phenomenal night, and I cannot wait. And it's in a couple of weeks' time. Come along and join us. Brian, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up this afternoon. Thanks very much for joining us. We might be doing something soon. Watch this space with Brian's Supporters Club, and we'll keep you informed online and on the stream. Thank you, every one of you, for getting involved. Join us again tomorrow for the match day. All that's left for me to say, Brian Degnan, thank you for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.